So I figured I'd make a quick video about this sword in my collection, and what it is a model 1941 Cutlass. Now these come from a family of Dutch swords, often referred to as Klewang's or Klewangs, which is named after a type of sword from Southeast Asia. Incidentally, I might be butchering that pronunciation, but I have no idea. Anyway, the 1941 is easily distinguishable from the models that preceded it because of these jet black bakelite handle scales. Yes, they're actually made out of bakelite. Anyone that knows what bakelite is probably associates it with gun stocks because it's often used in gun stocks. Otherwise, it's very similar to the models that preceded it. The entire thing is blued to resist weather. These were intended to be used in the Dutch East Indies, which is obviously a very damp and tropical environment where something like this would probably rust quite easily, especially if not maintained properly. Has the half basket guard with the 3 cutouts to reduce weight, and of course the messer style or knife style handle construction. So you can see there has a full width tang running through the middle of the handle and 2 handle scales secured to either side with these rivets. And the blade of the sword is 25 inches long, has a nice clipped point there, slightly curved. The fuller runs about 2/3 of the way up the blade, and as far as I can tell it has no distal taper, although it doesn't seem to negatively affect the handling of the weapon too much. In fact, this sword really does feel quite good in the hand. Now this is particularly interesting. This model of sword is particularly interesting because it is probably one of the last models of sword ever issued for combat. Most swords of this time period were purely ceremonial, but there's really no doubt that this sword was definitely intended for combat. It's a very utilitarian design, and I think that's a fact that makes it quite interesting. Now, the 1941 was produced in the United States by a company called Milwaukee Saddlery Company. They were intended to be supplied to the Dutch forces in the East Indies. However, because the Dutch were overrun quite early on in World War II, many of these swords simply wound up in storage and were later sold as military collectibles, which is probably the story of this one. But it is also possible that some of these swords were actually issued to U.S. forces in the Pacific. You can find photographs of U.S. servicemen in the Pacific at that time with these swords, which is quite interesting, I think. And overall, I just really like the design of this sword, the fact that it is so utilitarian, but I also like the look of it. Yeah, just a really interesting sword in my opinion. So, thank you for watching.